Dear audience, welcome to the show Power Chat. In today's episode, we are going to discuss about the overall human rights situation of Nepal. Joining me today is Mr. Subodhraj Pakurel, human rights activist and the chairperson of Informal Sector Service Center, INSEC. Please allow me to welcome him. Welcome to the show, Mr. Pakurel.
Thank you very much.
How have you been?
Fine.
Well, we'll be discussing next half an hour overall human rights situation of Nepal with particular focus on the state of impunity. Would you highlight on the overall human rights situation?
In the current situation, you see, there are no any organized group which has taken up the violent strategy. So due to that, the violence and the human rights violation related with that kind of a conflict is not there. But if you see in terms of a culture of violence, which is very much persistent in this country, that is still there, and we have not been able to reduce that significantly. And third one is that the message from the upper echelon of the society, which comes from the governance, the parliament, the security sector, which has not given any positive message to the society that any kind of a violation shall not be tolerated. And you know that our political leaders have been enjoying all forms of impunity. So I see that people are not very hopeful, and due to that reason, whenever their human rights has been violated, they don't get the proper treatment, even proper response from the responsive state mechanism.
So you mean impunity is everywhere due to inefficiency of the state agencies addressing the root causes of the human rights violations during the decade-long conflict?
That is very true, but the reason behind that is more important when you think about the political consciousness of the political leaders, political actors. Usually what is happening in this country, that political leaders do enjoy the impunity, because when some political leader is engaged or the political leader interferes in the issue, in the incident, that means his favor or disfavor guides the security agency, and that goes all the way through the prosecuting agency, and the case takes the shape which may be able to get the success, in most of the cases unsuccessful to give the justice. So these all factors do have their impact even up to the judiciary. So in the nutshell, I can say that a massive campaign for the change in the culture is needed, which has not been able still now, though the civil society is trying their best, but we have not been able because state apparatus has not been that cooperative. If they would have been cooperative, they would have made significant changes in the curriculum. They would have adopted the policy of public media to aware the people, and they would have made their own security agency and prosecuting agencies more efficient and sensitive towards protecting the rights of the people. So these factors, these three factors, are really lacking in our country.
Well, you raised an important issue by saying that the political parties do enjoy impunity. What is your observation? You travel to the districts and observe through your programs in the campaign. Don't they fear of the elections? What is your observation about their presence at the local level?
See, the most important thing I have found that for the politicians, people are population. They count on some of the personalities who do have their influence either due to their capacity to wage the terror, impose the terror, or due to some other reason. So these people do have the impact. So the whichever side those influential people will take up, that means that side will get impunity. So that is applied in the most of the cases related with the gender violence and violence against the Dalits. Having said this much, the two more things are very important, very, very important. You asked with me about the nationwide scenario, but I would put two representative cases. One, the former MP Balkrishna Dhungel, who was convicted by the Supreme Court but never arrested by the police. This is now more than 8 years. Second, quite recently, about 8 months before, Supreme Court ordered to arrest a person called Sabilal Paudel and try him properly. Nothing has been done. You may remember that one guy, Mr. Krishna Prasad Adhikari, was killed by the so-called Maoist, and his father and mother went on fast unto death, demanding the justice. The father died while observing fast unto death on the bed. His dead body is still lying in the morgue of teaching hospital. Quite recently, the mother, Ganga Maya, also started the fast unto death. Just 2 days before, we requested her to break her fast because the Chitwan district court ordered that someone from the court would go to her place and take the statement. Just for that demand, she had to go for the fast unto death.
Well, Mr. Pacurel, these are the representative cases.
Yeah.
There are so many cases during the decade-long conflict that occurred from the both warring parties, the government and the then Maoists who were taking part in the conflict, in the war. Who is responsible particularly? You mentioned that there is state recklessness on booking the culprits or the perpetrators. How do you observe the capacity of the state agencies, especially that of the judiciary and the executives, also the parliamentarians? Who is most responsible for not booking the perpetrators or the culprits?
See, one thing, most significant thing is that even the atrocities, even the crimes have been politicized. That is the biggest lacking in our whole system of thinking, system of practicing, system of executing. Currently, we know very well that the transitional justice mechanism could be only complementary to the criminal justice system, right? There are two commissions already working on that. But if you see the process, what they have done, they made a public call to fill up the forms so that they could register what happened against them.
You mean the commissions, Truth and Reconciliation
Yes,
Commission
Truth
and
and
Commission on the Disappeared Persons.
Disappearance, yeah, both commissions. The people filled up the forms. Now, these commissions do not have any authority to provide any kind of a immediate reparative, things, immediate reparations. They cannot provide the immediate reparations, number one. Number two, victims are quite unable to furnish the proof because they are the victims. They don't have the proof. They do have only the statement. Now, third, the government has not established any special court to examine the conflict era cases. Fourth, we don't have the law on the disappearance. We have not been able to promulgate the law on the humanitarian law, Geneva Convention. We don't have the proper law against torture. And lastly, even if we promulgate those necessary laws on which these both commissions would be able to recommend any kind of a action, those laws needs to be retroactive. Whereas our constitution says that no laws having retroactive implications shall be promulgated. So these are the basic constitutional bottlenecks. Number one. Number two, until there is a assurance that the witnesses are protected, they will get the security. Until the victims do get the believable assurance that the same kind of atrocities shall not be repeated, the whole process cannot take a positive move, positive development. So I have seen that though the victims came in quite a good number, it is almost more than 55,000, but according to my observation, it should have gone more than 70,000. Though I am not sure that within 2 years of time, even if the period shall be extended for another 1 year, I mean within 3 years of time, these two commissions can never investigate properly and recommend the proper action. Even if they recommend, that will be only based on circumstantial evidence, if they would try little hard. But they have not done that. They have simply provided 5 pages statements where the victims are needed to fill up the points, and victims usually they could not fill up all the points, and victims did not have any kind of a proof, especially if you see the cases of rape, the cases of disappearance. How to prove that who was responsible? It was the party which was responsible. And when we talk about the party, as I told you before, the party leaders are totally immune. So these are the basic problems. So we have been telling that there must be a special law to address the cases which did occur during the conflict era. So that could be a law like giving even indicative punishment, not to the whole, but to the small part of the punishment may be served to the criminal. Number one. Number two, there should be a proper reparation, not only plan but the activity which is visible to the daily life of the villagers where the incidences occurred, which has not been there.
So you raised a lot of issues concerning transitional justice instruments, including that of the TRC and Disappearance Commission. What is the logic behind establishing or forming such commissions if they cannot work properly so to address the cases of the war or conflict time? And what is the solution for this? It's been long and there has been a lot of resources invested to establish these commissions. And what is the solution? How can these institutions or these instruments be replaced? And how would you justify that the special courts or other instruments would really work so to provide justice to the victims and their families?
Number one, we need the special court immediately, because any court would not provide the cases which they do have to any kind of this quasi-judicial entity like TRC. Court cannot provide the cases which they are examining to the TRC mechanism, either Commission Against Disappearance or Truth and Reconciliation. Likewise, even National Human Rights Commission has also expressed in the tune of the Supreme Court that they will not provide the document to the court, to these commissions. Rather, if the victims do request, they can provide the copy of the cases of the complaints of the victims with the consent of the victims. Number one. But to the special court, the court will be happy to provide the cases, as the special court will be one of the extended organ of the court itself. number one. So we need the special court. Number two, there are several cases which were not very severe. In such cases, pardon may be possible, but pardoning on the basis of the leader's speech is not possible. You need to have a pardon act. Number two. Number three, if you promulgate the pardon act, that must be in line to the international obligation and the obligation of our own law and constitutional values and principles. Number four, the proper process of investigation which can satisfy the victim that state has done sufficiently to find the truth in favor of myself, that would work. Whereas in the present context, any process is not in that tune which is sufficiently satisfying the mindset of the victims. Number five, the issues of the conflict era is not only the issue of a victim or a state or the then rebels. That is basically the issue of the whole society. So if you see in the whole transitional justice process of Nepal, there is nowhere the presence of the society. Whereas in Nepal, our societies at the villages are very much interlinked, interconnected and very close within each other. So these are the factors which should be taken into consideration besides the technical factors, maybe exhumation factor or the capable lab or capable technicians, for which we may need to invite the external experts which we don't have in our country.
So you mean the instruments in existence are not formed or institutionalized as per the international treaties that Nepal is a state party to?
That is true. That is why United Nations have been telling that with this current structure and with this current ongoing process, United Nations cannot support the transitional justice process which is ongoing in Nepal currently.
What is the role of the civil society organizations and the people like you working with the organizations promoting human rights culture for a long time?
See, for our politicians, the political balancing, political mockering, these are very important. Quite recently you have seen we promulgated the constitution with the support of 91% of the constituent assembly member. But that constitution is still in limbo. We don't know whether that will be implemented or not. Immediately after the promulgation, they are asking for another kind of a demarcation of provinces, which is very difficult. And the political conflict is so mysterious that quite oftenly we are changing the government. New government, while coming into power, it has been simultaneously expressed that this government will stay for 9 months and then there shall be another change. So in all these discourses, for the politicians, human rights is a secondary subject, neglected subject. They think everything is governance, the government, formation of the government, making their own cadres the ministers, and they don't realize that democracy is for the people, to honor the aspirations of the people, and leaders should be ready to sacrifice for the benefit of the people so that in long run people will really honor them. That part is lacking. And lastly, the society has been totally divided in the name of the caste, in the name of the ethnicity and so many other. So due to which people do not have a united voice. They don't find any towering leader on which they could believe. So there is a big gap within the leadership itself. Those who favored the constitution could not go to their constituency and tell the people that these are the good things, so constitution is better.
You at the beginning raised issue on political protection to the criminals
Yeah.
or the crimes during the war time or the conflict time. Is it merely due to the not having a good spirit by all political parties, especially those in the power for last few years? As you mentioned, some of them joined government for 9 months or 8 months.
I think our political leaders do think that the power in the government, the power of the politics is above everything. They don't realize that there is universal jurisdiction. I don't mean, when I talk about universal jurisdiction, I am not only talking about the courts all over the world. I am talking about the mind and heart of the people all over the world, because human rights is a global matter, global philosophy, global commitment of the people. It's not only limited to the executive function or technical function of the judiciary or the parliament or whatever. So they think that they can do whatever they like. That is happening. In the case of Sabilal, as I told, in the case of Balkrishna Dhungel, as I told, police cannot arrest them. Balkrishna was traveling in the same car with the then Prime Minister Mr. Baburam Bhattarai.
So institution other than political parties should also be blamed, as you mentioned, the security sector institution and in some extent judiciary.
That is true. That is true.
What is the role of the constitutional body, NHRC, National Human Rights Commission,
National Human Rights Commission,
especially addressing the causes of impunity?
they have not actually made a good research on the cause of impunity. They have not been able even to challenge the government decision and the activity in the court. I have been personally, and most of us went to the National Human Rights Commission and requested them to file a case in the Supreme Court against all these forms of impunity and the impunity oriented activity of the state and the politicians. But they never have shown their courage, which is, we even put the example of National Human Rights Commission of India, which has filed several cases in Supreme Court and found justice for the victim. But our National Human Rights Commission never have been that courageous.
You mean the NHRC here
Yeah.
is not in a condition to file cases?
Yes.
It is merely due to its mandate or its willingness?
No, if you see the law on National Human Rights Commission, being a constitutional body, they can file a case in the Supreme Court. There is no obstacle on that. But why they don't file, it's a very quite surprising matter. So, in nutshell, we can say that the mindset within our society, especially the society of the upper echelon of the society, including the constitutional body, including the executive and the parliamentary bodies, they don't have the sense and the sufficient commitment that democracy works for the people at the grassroots. And the first and foremost duty of the office bearers in politics and or executive is to protect the people, not themselves.
Well, Mr. Pacurel, we are coming to the end of the show. We have touched upon so many issues. Finally, would you recommend with the actions that stakeholders should take so to end the impunity, including that of the grave human rights violation during the conflict?
In short, I can say that they should definitely reform the whole process of addressing impunity. With the ongoing process, the traditional process, we can never address the challenge of impunity. If they think on that line, at that point, not only Nepali civil society but international actors will also be able to cooperate and help them to get the tangible result.
Well, thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dear audience, time now to wrap up the show. See you next week. Keep watching us. Namaste.